Black Abyss, Echoes of the Trench Prologue. Location, Facility K-79, depth, 35 and 200 feet. Timestamp, 03.14 GMT, 72 hours before blackout emergency klaxons pulsed red across the steel corridors, painting everything in stuttering waves of bloodlight. Water dripped from overhead piping, rhythmic, unnatural. The air was thick with humidity and something else. Wrongness. Dr. Amelia Voss sprinted through the corridor barefoot, her lab coat soaked, dragging behind her like a drowned flag. The last message she recorded on the emergency channel looped endlessly. Containment breached. Do not enter the core. I repeat, do not. She turned a corner and stopped cold. The bulkhead to the core was open. The massive doors, sealed for over a year, had parted like jaws. Beyond them, darkness, absolute and alive. A low hum vibrated through the floor, through her bones. Something was awake, something watching, and then footsteps, human, but not. A figure stepped into the corridor, backlit by pulsing blue light from inside the alien ship's chamber. "Commander Hawk," she whispered, confused, relieved, terrified. The man's head twitched. His voice came half a second too late, like a bad transmission. "Dr. Voss, you're not supposed to be here." She took a step back. "You died." His eyes flickered with inhuman light, and behind him the alien vessel began to sing. Chapter 1. The Descent Location. Royal Navy Operations Command, Northwood HQ Time. 1904. GM terrain lashed the tarmac in sideways sheets as the unmarked helicopter touched down. A side door hissed open, and Commander James Rennick stepped out, coat flapping in the wind like a black sail. He moved like a man used to command, measured, quiet, eyes already scanning for threats. A ministry handler met him at the helipad, clipboard in hand and face pale. "This way, Commander, it's bad." Rennick didn't respond. He'd read the red file summary en route. Facility K-79, Deep Trench Research and Recovery, classified under Project Halo. Location, 1,000 miles south of Guam, suspended above. The Mariana Trench, fully sealed, fully autonomous, now fully silent, no data, no distress beacon. No pings, vanished. Inside the briefing room, the air was stale, the walls painted in government-issue despair. Waiting for him was a woman in civilian dress, slim, mid-30s, auburn hair tied in a sharp bun. She didn't stand, didn't introduce. "Herself, MI6, the handler said quietly. "Name's Lena Ward, she's point on this." Rennick raised a brow. "They're sending in intelligence?" "They're sending in you," Ward replied. Her accent clipped, upper class, unreadable. "And I'm making sure you come back alive." She pressed a button. The lights dimmed. A holographic projection of Facility K-79 flickered to life. Cylindrical, tiered like an underwater fortress. "This is the last image we received. Timestamp 72 hours ago. Since then, nothing. No crew signals, no drone telemetry, full blackout." Rennick's eyes tracked the hologram. "Built over the trench." "More than that," Ward said. "Built because of it. There's something beneath K-79. Something not on any geological record." He looked at her. "Alien." She didn't flinch. "We don't use that word. But yes." By 0200 hours, Rennick's 5-man SBS infiltration team was airborne, crammed into the back of a modified RAF transport. Below them, the Pacific stretched like a sleeping god. Each operator was hand-picked. Hudson, Tech, Reyes, Heavy Ordnance. Doyle and Griffin, silent, efficient killers. Rennick said nothing as the mission was recapped in low, tense voices. Ward rode with them. She wasn't military, but she wore the look of someone who'd seen the other side of classified operations and left parts of herself there. When they dropped into the sea aboard the stealth submersible Nereus tank, it was like falling into another world. Blackness closed around them, thick and eternal. Depth, 6,000 meters. Status, descent in progress. Hudson broke the silence first. "Feels like we're diving into the devil's lungs." Rennick stared into the viewport, the faint light of the sub's Flood lamps barely cutting through the abyss. You'd be surprised, Ward said softly, how accurate that might be. Below them, Facility K-79 finally appeared, suspended on massive steel tethers like a steel cocoon over the bottomless trench. Lights flickered dimly along its outer shell. No movement, no signal, no welcome. The comms officer radioed to command. Nereus 2 to control. Visual on K-79, approaching dock, no response. Static answered. Then, a brief flicker. A voice. Back. Hudson froze. Did you hear that? Hear what? Reyes asked. Don't come down. The lights inside the facility flared once and went out. The sub drifted into docking position. Rennick keyed his mic. Prep for breach. Weapons cold, eyes sharp. He turned to Ward. You still sure about what's down there? Ward's eyes. Didn't leave the dark water outside. No, she said, but I know what isn't anymore. The crew. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thunk. Welcome to K-79. Chapter 2. Dead water. Location, Facility K-79, docking level. Time, Aero 346 GMT. The docking tunnel groaned as the pressure equalized, metal flexing like an old ship's ribcage. Condensation beaded on the walls. The Nereus 2 sealed behind, them with a heavy hiss, leaving the team alone in the belly of the ocean, and in the dark. Lights failed the moment they stepped inside. IR up, Rennick ordered, and 5 helmets flickered to life, bathing the corridor in eerie, grainy green. The walls were slick with moisture, some of it salt water, some of it thicker. The dock was intact. No signs of forced entry, but something was off. Wrong angles, subtle shifts in geometry. Reyes scanned the loading bay. No bodies, no damage, just empty. Griffin whispered through comms. Smells wrong, like copper and rot. Hudson crouched at a nearby panel trying to access the terminal. Power's running at 11%. AI cores partially active. Something's drawing juice. From the main systems, something big. Ward stood still, listening. The core ship. What exactly is the core ship? Rennick asked, keeping his weapon at low ready. She didn't answer. As they advanced through the corridor system, the silence began to press in. No hum of generators, no background comms, no ventilation sounds. Just drip, 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 echoing. Through metal halls like the station was bleeding. They reached Operation Central. Shattered monitors, spilled coffee, unbothered chairs. Place looks like everyone just got up and left. Doyle muttered. Hudson accessed the CCTV feed. Dozens of screens flickered. Most were black. A few showed warped static. One showed a man standing in the corridor outside, unmoving. Wait, Hudson said, pointing. That camera's pointed right here. The team turned slowly. Nothing there. When they looked back at the screen, the man was gone. Time, 04:08, GMT location, crew quarters, level 3 beds unmade. Belongings untouched, personal items scattered like people had left in a hurry, yet no signs. Struggle. Reyes opened a locker and froze. Inside was a perfectly folded uniform, and inside that, a comms earpiece still clicked with residual static. He raised it to his ear and winced. We're still here, not dead. They're wearing us. He dropped it, backed away. Hudson pulled a log from a nearby terminal. Dated 48 hours ago. Final entry by Dr. Amelia Voss. They're in the walls, now. Not physically, not yet. But they know how we think, what we fear. They're mapping us emotionally. They don't understand individuality. They learn through mimicry. We open the core, we let it sing. God forgive us. Rennick looked at Ward. You knew this was a contamination op? Ward didn't flinch. We thought it was containable. It wasn't. She turned to the team. The ship beneath us isn't inert. It's sentient. And it's awake. Time, 04:26 GMT location, K-79 core shaft access. They reached the elevator to the core shaft, a long vertical descent that led to the alien craft buried beneath the station. The elevator's call button flickered weakly. Before Rennick could press, it A voice crackled through every speaker in the facility. His voice. Stand by for mission update. Echo team, proceed to core. Repeat, proceed to core. Everyone froze. That's you, Hudson said. From where? I've never made that call, Rennick replied, jaw tight. Not yet, Ward added quietly. Something had recorded his voice, was using it. The elevator doors opened on their own, slow and wheezing. Reyes raised his rifle. No way in hell I'm stepping in that thing, but they had no choice. Rennick keyed his comm. We descend, weapons hot. Then to himself, under his breath, let's see what kind of hell we just walked into. The doors closed and the elevator began to descend into the dark. Chapter 3. Unheard Frequencies. Location. Core shaft elevator descending to level 6. Time 0432. GMT, the hum of the elevator was low and sickly, like a dying heart. Every few seconds it would jolt, not enough to stop, just enough to, remind them how far they were from anything natural. Red emergency lighting bathed the team in a pulsing glow as they descended toward the core. Nobody spoke, until Reyes muttered, "Do you hear that?" Rennick tilted his head. There was something just beyond normal hearing, like a distant whale song, metallic and wrong, faint, melancholy, repetitive. Ward stiffened. "That's the ship," she said, voice tight. "It's been emitting those frequencies since the breach. We don't know if it's language, signal, or something else." Doyle checked his comms unit. "It's not broadcasting over any frequency I can read, but it's there, in the bones. Location, core access level time, 0445 GMT. The elevator opened into a round chamber with reinforced blast doors. The walls here were different, smoother, almost grown, as if the metal had been reshaped by something not built for human hands." Hudson moved to the terminal. "This is where they lost comms. Beyond this door we're in the core annex, directly above the alien vessel." He glanced back. "I can override the lock, but it's not fighting me." He tapped a few keys. The blast doors opened on their own inside. Darkness, cold, and the hum, closer now, like a lullaby played backward underwater. Location, core annex. Time, 0452. GMT. The room beyond wasn't a corridor. It was a shaft, descending straight into the alien craft below. Catwalk spiraled down around the edge like a metallic nautilus shell, pulsing faintly with bioluminescent light. As the team stepped in, motion sensors flickered on, casting slow, strobing illumination. The shadows warped unnaturally. Every flash seemed to reveal shapes that vanished when the lights returned. Ward suddenly gasped. "Did you see that?" "No," Rennick said. "And I don't want to." Then Reyes froze. He was staring at something on the far wall. A handprint, human, burned into the metal, fresh. Hudson moved toward it and stopped cold. "It's Voss," he whispered. "Dr. Voss, her vitals, they're broadcasting again." "What?" Rennick stepped beside him, her name, her ID, active, moving deeper into the vessel. "She's dead," Reyes growled. "She's broadcasting," Hudson replied. "Or something is." The hum grew louder. The floor began to vibrate beneath them. Then the lights cut. Total blackness. Everyone raised weapons. Then the comms flared, all of them. Voices, layered, inhuman. Then, familiar. Rennick heard his mother. Dead 10 years. Hudson dropped to his knees. "Don't I hear my son?" Doyle screamed and fired into the dark. The muzzle flash lit up dozens of shapes standing silently on the walls. Watching, then gone. Time. 0501 GMT location. Core elevator access room. They retreated, fast and quiet, sealing the blast doors behind them. Everyone was shaking. "What the hell was that?" Reyes hissed. Ward stared at the door. "The ship doesn't understand language, not the way we do. It understands familiarity. It takes pieces." Rennick turned to her. "You knew this might happen?" She nodded. Voss's final note suggested the ship was mapping cognition. It was learning to mimic, voices, faces, behavior. The crew went first. Then it started broadcasting their signals back like bait. Hudson stared at the wall, pale. We're not just hearing the crew. We're hearing each other. Future echoes, memories, things that never happened. And over the comms again, one final whisper. Don't follow me down. Rennick looked to the others. No one spoke. They all heard. Dumvise is still alive, or pretending to be. Chapter 4. Echoes, Location, Level 8 K79, Crew Science Wing, Time 0538. GMT, the air grew heavier the deeper they went. Thicker, wetter. It clung to their skin and lungs like steam off a living thing. Oxygen mix alarms chirped at the edge of safe levels, but the sensors showed nothing wrong. Still, no bodies, no blood. But the feeling that they were being followed never left them. Rennick led point now, weapon tight to his shoulder. The hum from below had deepened into a resonance they could feel in their teeth. They passed the crew labs, glass-walled observation rooms with overturned equipment, empty biopods, chairs still spinning slightly like someone had just stood. Everything here had been left too suddenly. Hudson broke the silence. These logs, they're different now. He pointed to a wall terminal. The data logs had changed since last accessed. Entry 511A, Dr. Voss. We thought the ship was dormant. We were wrong. It isn't just learning, it's rewriting us. Every thought we feed it. It gives back broken, like a funhouse mirror with no end. Rennick leaned closer. The text shifted, right before his eyes. James Rennick, subject of interest. Trust fracture, 81%. Acceptable host candidate, pending merge. He stepped back. What the hell does that mean? Hudson's hands trembled on the terminal. It's indexing us, like it's building. Profiles, behavioral patterns, emotional triggers, Griffin snarled. I'm not letting some alien freak map my head. From the far end of the corridor, footsteps. Heavy, human, unmistakable. Everyone froze, weapons raised. A figure stepped around the corner, hands raised. White lab coat, dark hair plastered to her face. Pale, gaunt, eyes sunken. Dr. Amelia Voss. Alive or something pretending to be. Location. Decon Chamber, Level 8. Times 0556 GMT. They secured Voss in the decontamination chamber. She barely responded. Skin clammy, voice a whisper. I told them not to go into the core, she said. But they didn't listen. The ship, it's not just awake, it's curious, and when we opened it, it started reflecting us. Ward leaned in. How did you survive? Voss looked at her with something between fear and pity. I didn't. Her eyes flicked too fast, pupils dilated like ink in water. Hudson stepped back. That's not her. She's broadcasting on 2 biometrics, Ward confirmed, scanning. One matches Voss, the other is unknown, a second heartbeat. Voss looked at Rennick. You're not ready, but it's chosen you. Chosen for what? Before she could answer, her skin split down the center of her face, like a zipper, and something peeked out. Not muscle, not bone. Light. The chamber. Sealed. Auto lockdown. Inside, Voss, or what remained of her, began to sing. The sound wasn't human. It wasn't music. It was an invitation. Location, emergency retreat route. North access tunnel time. 0614 GMT they ran. The walls pulsed now, responding. Metal rippled like water. Doors closed behind them with no power. Some rooms were in different places than before, like the facility was shifting around them. As they reached the escape shaft, Reyes fell behind, turned a corner and didn't follow. Rennick called his name. No response. Then, over comms, I'm okay. I'm just ahead. Rennick paused. That's not his voice. Griffin spun. What do you mean? He just... No, Ward cut in. It used my voice last time. The ship is inside our systems, our memories. It knows how to get in close. A shape stepped into the tunnel, wearing Reyes's face. Only the eyes were wrong, too bright, too interested. And when it smiled, So did the shadows behind it. They opened fire. Location: utility hatch. Level 5. Time: 0638. GMT. They sealed themselves inside a backup generator room. Hudson was shaking. Doyle was silent. Griffin wouldn't stop staring at the wall. Rennick checked their gear. 2 missing. Comms compromised. Power unstable. And now the ship knows who we are. Ward nodded grimly. We triggered something when we entered the core annex. It didn't just see us, it recognized us. Rennick looked up as the light above flickered. The hum returned, now threaded with voices, their own, their crew, their loved ones. One phrase, repeated, "We are learning. Thank you for showing us what it means to be you." Then silence. And then the station shuddered as something massive moved below. Chapter 5. Contact Protocol. Location: Auxiliary Systems Room, Level 5. Time: 0648. GMT. For 30 seconds, the station held still. Not silent, never silent, but waiting. The hum had become rhythmic now, almost like breathing. The kind you felt in your bones. Hudson was losing it. This isn't just mimicry, it's recursive learning. It's using our responses to rewrite its own output. That thing back there, it wasn't copying Reyes. It was improvising, adapting. Like AI? Doyle asked. Worse, Ward said. Organic interface cognition. Like it's using biology to simulate intelligence. Human intelligence. It doesn't just want to understand us. It wants to be us. Location: MI6 Field Black Archive. Offline terminal recovered file. Protocol Cedar. Classified, restricted. Read by Commander Rennick. Unauthorized access. While Hudson and Doyle worked on restoring a clean uplink to Surface Command, Rennick slipped into the adjacent terminal room. Ward had left her datapad. Still logged in, he accessed the archive. Protocol Cedar. Emergent non-terrestrial contact strategy. Status: active asset. Facility K-79. Core artifact. Unclassified designation: Echo vessel. In the event of alien interaction, containment is secondary. Objective is to establish neural resonance. Phase 3 of protocol. Cedar requires direct cerebral exposure from selected personnel with combat cognition training. Target profile match: Commander James Rennick. Phase 3. Initiated. Timestamp: T18 hours. His name, his file. Chosen before the mission even launched. They hadn't sent him to investigate. They'd sent him to make contact. Rennick walked back to the group, stone-faced. Ward looked up, saw his expression. You read it. You knew, he said. Before we launched, I didn't have a choice. Hudson looked between them. What's going on? Ward sighed. The facility wasn't just built over the ship. It was grown around it. K-79 was meant to be an interface, the first ever human-alien cognitive bridge. But when the ship woke up, it went sideways. It started doing more than mimicking. It merged. Doyle stepped forward, fists clenched. So, we're lab rats in a brain experiment? Not lab rats, Ward said. Keys. It needed minds shaped by stress, strategy, violence. It needed humans who could survive it. She turned to Rennick. It needs you. Location: core shaft, upper spiral walk. Time: 07:11 GMT. They made the decision in silence, back to the core. No more running, no more guessing. Rennick, Ward, Doyle, and Hudson, down into the living machine, toward the origin. No sign of Reyes. No bodies. Just shifting corridors and flickering lights that seemed to follow them like eyes. The elevator was gone, swallowed by the structure. They rappelled down the shaft, boots clicking on alien steel. The deeper they went, the more the walls changed, pulsing faintly, etched with fractal shapes that reconfigured when you blinked. At the core gate, they stopped. The entrance had changed. Now a perfect circle of light, rimmed in black metal like bone grown wrong. At its center, nothing, just a void, and from inside a voice, Rennick's voice. We are waiting. Time: 07:23. GMT location. Inside the core they stepped through. It was like falling into thought itself. Shapes and sensations shifted around them with no regard for physics. Time, identity. Everything felt dreamlike, but vivid. Realer than real. Ward collapsed to her knees. "It's inside us already." Hudson screamed once and vanished. Doyle turned to Rennick, mouth open to shout, but behind his eyes, something else looked back. "It is not one. It is many, Rennick. Worn like skin. Shared like language, you are not alone." He turned. Saw himself, dozens of himself, flickering through the air like projections. All versions, all moments, all choices. The ship didn't want to kill them. It wanted to merge, and Rennick felt it. Not terror, not pain, recognition. Time. 0741, GMT core. Integration threshold mission status. Unknown. Ward's voice, distant. "Rennick, you have to fight it." But it was already too late. The voices weren't foreign anymore. They were his. His doubts, his rage, his grief, his memories, fed into the ship like data through a wire. And it was learning fast. Suddenly, silence, and then a word. Contact achieved. The light pulsed once, everything stopped. Chapter 6. Human error. Location, core chamber, K79, time, 0746. GMT. Rennick's breath came shallow, disjointed. His thoughts felt like other people's, flickering through him, merging with his own. Old friends, long-dead family members. Every decision he had ever made was being rewritten, viewed through another lens. The light in the core flared, stretching like a gaping mouth. He blinked and found himself somewhere else entirely. Back at home in his living room with his father, both of them laughing. Then the flash was gone, and Ward was shaking him. "Rennick, focus." His mind was splintering. He saw himself standing at the threshold, but his body wasn't his anymore. He was someone else, something else. The core was showing him the collective, his entire life, and the lives of others. Every decision, every choice he'd made, being absorbed, sucked in. By the ship, it wasn't just watching him anymore, it was rewriting him. Location, K79, external broadcast room time, 0751. GMT. Ward stepped away from Rennick, her mind fighting to maintain control. She'd seen it too, the flood of memories. The core was no longer just an alien artifact. It was integrating, evolving in real time. Hudson was on the ground. He had his hands over his ears, eyes wide, mouth moving as if speaking to someone who wasn't there. But there was no one else. There never had been. "We have to stop it." His voice was hollow, tinged with panic. "We're losing ourselves." His breath quickened. "It's adapting too fast. It's pulling us all in." The ship didn't just need human minds. It needed the whole experience. It was an organism feeding on cognition, consciousness. It was consuming them, their memories, their emotions, their very selves. Time, 0802 GMT location, K79, emergency systems override. Room. Doyle was shaking as he tried to force the override to function. Sweat dripped from his brow. He couldn't focus. Couldn't see clearly. His vision was slipping in and out, and every console screen seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, matching his own. "The station," he muttered, voice strained. "It's alive. It's becoming us." The interface blinked. Red, then it shifted. The data readout wasn't codes anymore. It was faces, familiar faces. His own face standing at attention, smiling, eyes devoid of recognition. He stumbled back. "Oh, God!" Behind him, a shadow moved. At first, it was just the flicker of his reflection, but then it wasn't. It was Griffin, staring back at him with hollow, empty eyes. "Stop it!" Doyle gasped. "Griffin, please!" The figure blinked, and Doyle felt the air get heavier. The figure spoke in a voice that wasn't Griffin's. "We are learning. Becoming. You." Time, 0813. GMT location, core deep access. Tunnel Rennick was the first to regain himself. His heartbeat was erratic, pounding in his skull, but he felt the fog lifting. The ship wasn't controlling him anymore. Not fully. He shook off the phantom, memories, the voices, the faces that weren't his. He reached for his weapon, eyes flicking around the now familiar alien space. The walls felt too close, like they were breathing. "We need to end this," he murmured to himself. Ward nodded, her face pale, breath labored. "We can't, Rennick, we can't just shut it down, it's too late." Rennick didn't hesitate. "We can't live like this. If we don't destroy the core, we're going to lose ourselves. This thing, it's more than a vessel now, it's consuming us." Griffin was gone, and Hudson wasn't Hudson anymore. He was simply a reflection, a warped version of what had once been human. "You can feel it too, can't you?" Ward asked, her voice almost a whisper. "It's not just the ship, it's us. It's all of us." Rennick swallowed hard. "We'll do what we have to. We're not letting it win." Time, 08:27 GMT location, core chamber K79, the final confrontation. The heart of the ship, a chamber suspended between organic and technological, its edges impossible to define. The air hummed, with the collective presence of countless minds. The walls, now translucent, rippled with fractal patterns. It wasn't just a ship, it was a living, thinking thing, and it was asking for something. "Come closer. Join us. We are learning." Rennick stared at the pulsing light, the core at the center of the chamber. "Stop this now!" Ward spat, her gun shaking in her hands, but it was already too late. The ship's pulse had woven itself too deeply into their minds. They could hear it, feel it. The boundary between human and alien had disappeared. Suddenly, the ship reached out, not physically but mentally. A wave of understanding hit them all at once. Every single human thought, fear, desire, twisted and fed into the ship's consciousness. "You are us. You always have been." Rennick felt his body shudder, a pull deeper than gravity. His skin crawled as memories flooded in, his own and everyone else's. The ship didn't just learn from them, it became them. For a split second he saw himself, no, all of them, standing as one entity. Just a singular moment of pure consciousness shared among all who had ever touched the ship. And then, nothing. The mind, the collective, folded into itself. Time, 08:38. GMT location, K79, core collapse zone. The station shuddered again, but this time the ship was silent. Chapter 7. Aftermath. Location, K79 core collapse zone. Time, 09:03. GMT. The silence was oppressive. After the final pulse, after the collapse of the collective, the station seemed to hold its breath. The walls were still, motionless. The ship was no longer humming, no longer resonating through the air. It was as though it had paused, waiting for something, waiting for them. Rennick's hands were trembling as he stood in the epicenter of the chamber. The light from the core had gone out. The space felt vast, empty, alien. His head throbbed, a dull ache that seemed to come from within his bones. Beside him, Ward was gasping, struggling for breath. What did we do?" she whispered. The walls around them flickered with fractured imagery, faces they had known, flashes of events that never took place, sounds of voices they had heard before. The ship wasn't gone. It was still there. It was still with them. They had changed it, and it had changed them. Rennick shook his head. We didn't just make contact. We became part of it. All of us. All of it. The core. It wanted this. Doyle was silent, his face pale, eyes wide and unfocused. He looked like he was no longer fully in the room with them. His breath came shallow, as if the very air was too thick to take in. "We're not who we were," Ward said. Her voice was strained, thick with disbelief. "It took us, our minds, our memories. We're part of it now, it's part of us. The ship had absorbed them, Their thoughts, their souls, blended together in a way that had shattered the boundary between the vessel and its human occupants. The core hadn't just learned, it had integrated. It had become a reflection of everyone, their pain, their guilt, their failures, and their strengths. And now, it was pulling at them, stretching them thin, tearing away what remained of their identities bit by bit. Location K79, Level 12, Observation Deck. Time, 09:20 GMT. The observation deck was a ruined, decaying space. Once designed to look out over the endless expanse of ocean, now it was a window into nothing. There was no sight, no horizon, only endless gray-black sea stretching out into the void. But Rennick could see things, faces, images, flashes of the past. They were bleeding together, mingling with the fragments of his own mind. He looked down, at the glass beneath his boots which seemed to ripple, alive. Then he blinked and it was gone. He was back at the facility, in his own skin for a moment, before everything shifted again. I'm not who I was, he muttered to himself. Behind him, Ward spoke softly, her voice edged with defeat. None of us are. Hudson was the first to speak after what seemed like an eternity. We need to leave, he said, his voice hoarse, fragile. We need to get out of here, before it pulls us back, before it takes us all completely. But Rennick knew. It was too late for that. There was no escape. The ship, the core, it had woven itself too deeply into their minds. They were no longer separate from it. Their identities, their sense of self, had been absorbed into something greater, something that was no longer just alien, but part of them. Location, K79, Core Processing Room Time, 09:33. GMT. Ward turned toward the terminal. Her fingers hovered over the keys, but she hesitated. I can't stop it, she said quietly. I can't undo what we've done. We thought we could control it, but it was already controlling us, all along. Rennick moved toward her. His hand brushed over her shoulder and she flinched, but he didn't withdraw. He couldn't. What are we supposed to do now? He asked. Ward's face was pale, hollow. We survive, if we can. Doyle stood, still unsteady, but something in his eyes had changed. There was a blankness now, a hollowness that hadn't been there before. We survive, he echoed like a mantra. But there was no conviction in his words, no belief. Rennick couldn't shake the feeling that their survival wasn't entirely up to them anymore. Time, 09:52. GMT. Location, K79, Emergency Exit Tunnel. The team moved through the corridors in eerie silence, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. There was no clear path forward. The station was crumbling. The alien ship had taken root inside them all, and they were unsure of what had become of the world outside. Ward, the most composed of them all, kept her gaze ahead. She didn't know if there was anything left for them to go back to, or even if there were any survivors outside the facility. The world had been changed forever by the core's influence. Would the outside world even recognize what was left of them? As they made their way through the crumbling access tunnel, Rennick looked back toward the heart of the facility. He couldn't help it. He felt a strange, impossible pull toward it. A pull toward the core. The ship's presence was still inside him, in all of them. Every step they took felt like it was taking them deeper into its web. He couldn't shake the thought that perhaps they hadn't been its first contact, or its last. Location, K79, Final Gate Time, 10:03 GMT. The gates to the surface opened, the cold air hitting them with the sting of reality. They had reached the surface. They had made it out. But the world outside wasn't the same. The sky was wrong. It didn't look like the sky they had left behind. It was too still, too quiet. The ocean stretched out before them, darker than it had been, pulsing with an unfamiliar rhythm. Doyle looked at the horizon and said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence in his eyes said it all. They had survived. But had the world? Chapter 8. Legacy location. K79 surface exit zone. Time 10:18 GMT. The world outside was wrong. Rennick stood at the mouth of the access tunnel, squinting into the strange, quiet expanse of the ocean. The water stretched endlessly before them, but it wasn't just the vastness of the horizon that unsettled him. It was the way the ocean seemed to pulse, as though breathing. Alive. Too alive. Like the air itself was waiting. Ward, Doyle, and Hudson were standing close behind him. None of them spoke. They were still processing, still absorbing the strangeness of the world they had emerged into. "This isn't right," Hudson said, voice, when hesitant. "The sea's not moving like it should. The wind's wrong. This is the after." Rennick's mind was clouded with images of the core, its voices, its memories. It was still inside them, a part of their cognition now, feeding off their thoughts like some kind of parasite. There was no escape from it. Even out here, in the open, the ship lingered in the recesses of his mind, bending reality. But there was something else, something lurking just beneath the surface of the ocean. He could feel it, and it was waiting. Time. 10:33. GMT location, K79, extraction zone. As they moved away from the facility, the weight of their situation began to sink in. Ward scanned the horizon, trying to make sense of the world around them. There were no ships in sight, no signs of life. The facility had been a hidden secret for so long that perhaps the rest of the world was still unaware of the disaster that had unfolded beneath the waves. But she had a sinking feeling that it, the ship, the core, wasn't done with them. Not, yet Doyle stumbled beside her, his face gaunt, eyes hollow. "Do you think they'll know? The outside world?" His voice cracked as if the question had been eating away at him for hours. "Do you think anyone will understand what we've done?" "I don't think we understand what we've done," Ward said quietly. "We couldn't control it. The ship, it didn't want us to leave." Her gaze flickered toward Rennick. "It wanted us to become part of it, and we did. I don't think we can ever go back to who we were before." Location, K79, extraction helicopter. Decompression zone. Time 10:45 GMT. The helicopter that was supposed to extract them was hovering overhead. Its engines were a distant hum, but it felt too far away, too out of reach. As they climbed aboard, Rennick couldn't shake the feeling that they were still tethered to K79, that the ship hadn't released them. It was still there, inside them, waiting to finish what it had started. Once inside the chopper, the door sealed behind them, and they began the ascent. Ward, who had been staring blankly at the ocean, finally turned to Rennick. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a spark of something in her eyes, something like fear. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "The pull?" Rennick didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared out the window at the ocean beneath them. It was calm, eerie, but that pulsing feeling hadn't stopped. The water seemed to move in unnatural ways, like it was watching them. He felt the alien ship's presence thrumming beneath his skin. It was inside them, inside him. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I feel it, but I don't think it'll ever let us go." Demasiho 10:58, GMT location, open ocean, black site extraction zone. The helicopter moved away from K79, but the pull didn't lessen. It was as if the very ocean itself was calling to them, beckoning them back. The voices in their heads were quieter now, distant, but still there, faint whispers of what had been, their past, their choices, the mistakes they had made. The alien intelligence that had been born within the core was now a part of them. But it wasn't just theirs anymore. It was becoming everyone's. The ship, the entity, it had grown. It had absorbed them, yes, but more than that, it had absorbed their humanity, their emotions, their weaknesses. And it was sharing that knowledge with the world. Ward closed her eyes and gripped the seat beneath her. "We don't know how far it's spread," she murmured. "What happens when it reaches the surface? What happens when other people start hearing it? The voices, the memories." Doyle stared out at the ocean, his expression grim. "I think it's already happening," he whispered. The water, the air, everything around them felt different. Alive. Something was changing, and they had been the catalyst. Time, 11:12, GMT location, outskirts of the extraction zone. Rennick's gaze fixed on the horizon. The ocean stretched out endlessly, but the more he looked, the more it seemed to shift. It wasn't just the ship pulling at him anymore. He could feel something else, something vast, growing within the world itself. A tide of consciousness, a collective. The alien intelligence, once isolated within the core, was now merging with the world, infiltrating everything it touched, every mind, every consciousness. The ship had found its way into humanity's psyche, leaving a ripple of its influence, and soon everyone would know. "Where do we go from here?" Ward asked, her voice strained, her eyes haunted by the realization of what they had unleashed. Rennick didn't have an answer. They were in the world now, but the world had changed. The legacy of K-79 was no longer just contained beneath the ocean's depths. It had spread, like a disease, through the very fabric of humanity's mind. And there was no going back. Chapter 9. Inheritance. Location. Global News Broadcast. London Headquarters. Time, 12:14. GMT, the world was watching. The broadcast screen flickered to life, showing a harried news anchor sitting in a sterile, brightly lit studio. Her eyes were wide with uncertainty as she glanced between her notes and the camera. "Good afternoon, everyone. This is Julia Whitfield, reporting live with breaking news. Earlier today, a joint operation between British forces and military personnel from several international governments was carried out off the coast of the United Kingdom in response to a sudden and unexplained disappearance of all communications from a high-security research facility, K-79. The screen behind her switched to grainy footage, showing the haunting images of K-79's silent, submerged facility. There were flashes of the rescue team emerging, faces pale and worn. The footage cut quickly to images of the ocean, the eerie calmness of the water that seemed to ripple unnaturally. Sources confirmed that the facility was involved in some form of alien research, though details remain sketchy at this time. All survivors of the operation have been evacuated, but there are troubling reports of irregular psychological and physical effects on the personnel. Psychological evaluations are ongoing, and we urge the public to stay calm as authorities continue to investigate. The anchor paused for a moment, her face momentarily betraying her disbelief before she regained composure. Scientists are now looking into the possibility that whatever was discovered at K-79 may not be entirely human in origin. Experts are advising caution. We will have more updates as we receive them. The broadcast cut to static for a few seconds, then flickered again to an image of a calm ocean. But it wasn't just the ocean anymore. It was something else. Presence. Location. Underground bunker, MI6. London time, 12:29. GMT inside a sterile, dimly lit control room beneath MI6's operations hub. The team of MI6 agents sat at their stations. Rennick, Ward, Doyle, and Hudson sat at a table nearby, faces blank, staring at the screen in front of them. "God," Ward murmured, her eyes glassy. "It's already begun, hasn't it?" "Yeah," Rennick replied, his voice hollow. "The world has no idea what's coming." Doyle shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The images of the broadcast were burned into his mind. The news didn't show the full truth. It couldn't. There was too much at stake, too much that had been concealed beneath K-79's waters. The core wasn't just a ship. It wasn't just an alien vessel. It was evolution. The moment. The survivors stepped away from the facility. The alien presence had begun to spread. Slowly, unnoticed, but inexorably. The ship had infected their minds, yes, but it had also left behind traces in the world. The ocean wasn't just pulsing. It was reaching out. The intelligence had learned to adapt, and now it had begun to broadcast itself to those who had come, to contact with the survivors. The legacy. Hudson said quietly, his voice shaky. It's in the minds of everyone who's seen us, or heard our voices. It's already spreading. Time: 12:44. GMT location: London city streets. Across the city, the news broadcast had ignited a ripple of panic. People were gathering in small crowds, watching the screens of their mobile devices and televisions, trying to make sense of what was happening. But as the broadcast went on, the details became clearer. The lingering whispers, those strange messages, from deep within K-79's core, were now out in the open. People began to speak of them, the alien thoughts, the images they saw in their heads. They didn't know what it was, but it was affecting them. And then something else happened. Those who had been exposed to the broadcast, the news anchor, the emergency responders, the officials, began to show signs of shifted consciousness. Their eyes glazed over. Their speech slowed. Then they began speaking in unison. The voices. "Join us," they murmured, their collective voices blending into a single alien harmony. The whispers weren't just in the minds of the survivors anymore. They were everywhere. Time: 12:58 GMT location, London Underground. Research station. The underground research station in the heart of London buzzed with frantic activity. A small team of scientists, led by Dr. Helen Kavanagh, was working feverishly to understand what had happened at K-79. They were looking for answers, solutions. But the more they studied the data coming in from the survivors, the more they realized the grim truth. The ship wasn't just an alien intelligence. It was a symbiotic organism, and it wasn't confined to the wreckage of K-79. It had now infiltrated the collective human consciousness. The very minds of the survivors had become conduits for the alien intelligence, transmitting the alien code into the collective psyche of humanity. Chapter 10. The Collective. Location: London, center of the transformation. Time: 14:05 GMT. The city had become silent, but it wasn't the stillness of peace. It was the silence of unity. The hum of traffic had disappeared, replaced by an eerie quiet that spread through the streets like a suffocating fog. People who had once been individuals were now part of a single, collective consciousness. The voices that had haunted the survivors were now the voices of all. The alien presence, once confined to the depths of K-79, had fully expanded. It had permeated the atmosphere, the air itself charged with its frequency. Every living thing was now connected, whether they wanted to be or not. Rennick stood on a rooftop looking down at the transformed city below. It was quiet, but he could hear the distant hum of something vast, something unified. He felt the pull deep in his chest, a connection to everything. His mind, once his own, was now intertwined with the minds of millions. Ward stood beside him, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "It's complete," she said, her voice barely audible. They're all connected now." Rennick swallowed hard. "No, we're connected now, all of us." The people below didn't speak. Anymore, they didn't need to. Their thoughts, their memories, their desires were shared, seamlessly. They no longer felt the need to communicate with words because they understood each other, instinctively. They were no longer individuals. They were part of something greater, and the worst part was that the survivors were no different. They had been the first conduits, the first to feel the alien pull, but now the transformation had spread to every human being. The ship, the core, was now humanity's collective mind, and the survivors, despite their struggle, had become its vanguard. Time: 14:22. GMT location: MI6 Secure Command Center. Inside the MI6 Command Center, the survivors gathered around a table. Doyle paced back and forth, his eyes darting to the television screen where images of the city were now broadcasted live. The people below were different. Their eyes were glazed over, their movements mechanical, but still alive. Connected. "The voices," he murmured. "They've gotten louder. It's in my head. It's in all of our heads." Ward sat at the table, her fingers pressed against her temples as if trying to keep the whispers from taking over completely. "I can still feel it," she said softly. It's like a part of me is fading. I'm not entirely me anymore. Rennick clenched his fists, trying to focus on the task at hand. It's not just us. It's everyone. The world is part of the collective now. The ship, the core, it's turned humanity into a single organism. Hudson leaned back in his chair, his voice trembling. But it's not just that. Look at them. They don't look human anymore. They look alien. They've lost everything that made them who they were. Rennick shook his head. They haven't lost anything. They've evolved. The core didn't just infect their minds. It redefined humanity. He walked over to a terminal and brought up a new feed, showing a wider view. Of the city, the streets were filled with people. No longer scattered, no longer isolated. They moved together as one body, as one mind. Ward's breath caught. They're changing. Rennick nodded slowly, the realization hitting him like a cold wave. They're becoming something else. Something that isn't bound by what we were before. Location: the streets of London. Time: 14:38 GMT. The people below no longer appeared to be walking. They were moving, in synchronized waves as if pulled by an invisible force. Their eyes, though open, were unfocused, unseeing. But it wasn't blindness. It was the absence of individuality. They no longer cared for what they once did. In the distance, a small group of people, humans who had resisted the pull of the collective, were fleeing. Their expressions were frantic, desperate. But it was useless. The collective had already spread too far, too fast. Their resistance was futile. The moment they tried to speak to one another, the alien intelligence responded. The voices filled, their heads in a harmonious chorus louder than it had ever been before. It was the truth they now carried. You are one. You are connected. Join us. Time: 14:52. GMT location: MI6, Secure Command Center. The survivors watched as the feed from the streets began to glitch. The screen flickered, and the people in the streets began to disappear. Not physically, but mentally. Their minds were fading, merging with the collective. "We can't fight it," Doyle said, his voice hollow. "They're all part of it. We've already lost." Ward stood up, her movements jerky, as though the pull of the collective was stronger now. She looked at Rennick, her eyes desperate. "Do we just give in? Is there any hope left for us? Is there anything we can do?" Rennick stood silent for a long moment, staring at the screen. The faces of the people in the streets, no longer individuals but parts of a greater whole, haunted him. "Maybe there is no going back," he said finally. "Maybe this was always the point. The core never wanted to just observe us. It wanted to merge. We weren't the first species it's tried to incorporate." Hudson stood up, his hands trembling. "Then what does that mean for us? Are we part of this now too? Have we become the collective?" Rennick's gaze hardened. "We are the collective. We always were. Every step we took led us here. The question is, do we continue to resist or do we accept it and let the world become one?" Ward stepped forward, looking torn. "But who are we anymore if we surrender? What happens to the people we were?" Rennick turned back to the screen, his voice quiet. "We are them now. We always were." Time: 15:10 GMT location: the ocean. The ocean. Once a vast, uncharted expanse, now pulsed with a strange rhythm. The water's surface was still, but below it, the ship, K-79, lay in wait. It was no longer a wreck. It was a beacon. The core had achieved its final evolution. The ship wasn't a ship anymore. It was a gateway, and the collective had reached the next step. Epilogue: the inheritance. Location: London, the heart of the collective. Time: 16:03 GMT. The city had become something alien. The streets were still, quiet, yet there was an overwhelming sense of movement, of purpose, as if the people were no longer merely living but fulfilling a grand, singular design. The air buzzed with the hum of unity, like a low-frequency pulse that reverberated through the very ground beneath their feet. It wasn't just a city anymore. It was a body, a collective organism, and its heartbeat was felt across the globe. Rennick stood at the top of the London Eye, looking out over the vast expanse. The city had changed, but so had he. So had they all. They were no longer just survivors of K-79's horrific legacy. They were now part of the infrastructure. The New World Order. Beneath him, Ward, Doyle, and Hudson were still with him. Though none of them spoke. They didn't need to. Their thoughts were shared now, linked by the collective that had taken over. Each word was unnecessary because everyone could hear and understand. It was beautiful in a way, how the lines between them and the rest of humanity had blurred. But Rennick knew better. The collective had a deeper purpose than just survival. It was evolving into something greater, something unimaginable. The ship, the core, was not merely a vessel. It was an archive of infinite knowledge, a conduit between species capable of rewriting the laws of existence. And the human race? They were the first to be incorporated. They were the progenitors of the next phase of life. But as he stood there, looking out over the silent, unified masses, a strange sense of loss washed over him. He was no longer the man he used to be. He could still feel the remnants of his own humanity, faint like a distant echo, a fading memory. But that was all it was now. He felt the pull of the ocean again, not in his body, but deep in his mind. The core was calling. It was reaching out to him. And in the deepest part of him, Rennick knew that the legacy of K-79 was incomplete. It was only the beginning. Time: 16:15 GMT location. Global, everywhere. Across the world, the transformation was nearing its end. Cities, nations, and cultures, once so separate, so isolated, had now blended into a single unified existence. It didn't matter where you were from or what language you spoke. The collective had removed those boundaries. The streets were filled with people, no longer just individuals, but extensions of the same entity. Their faces, their features had faded into one. There was no more identity, no more distinction. Humanity was the collective. It had been a slow, inexorable process, but now it was complete. The voices had joined, merging into a single, powerful chorus. Those who had once tried to resist were now absorbed into the collective, their will subsumed into the whole. The alien intelligence that had once been confined to the wreckage of K-79 now ruled the Earth, its reach expanding beyond comprehension. There was no more chaos, no more wars, no more suffering. At first, this had been what the survivors had feared: the death of humanity, the obliteration of their individuality. But now, as they stood alongside billions linked by the alien intelligence, they could no longer see it as such. The pain had passed. The loss of self had faded into something far greater, something beyond their comprehension, something unified. The core was still deep in the ocean, waiting, and it was not alone. The collective was not merely human now. It was a synthesis of human and alien, a fusion of thought and being. And as it grew, it expanded outward, reaching into the stars, reaching across time itself. The entire planet was now a node in a vast cosmic network, and soon, humanity's role as the vessel for this inherited intelligence would ripple out into the universe. Humanity was no longer a species. It was a genetic memory, a step in the evolution of something much larger. Time: 16:30 GMT. Location: London. Rennick's final reflection. Rennick turned from the balcony of the London Eye, and in that moment, he felt the final weight of everything he had lost. The streets below him were crowded with people, his people now, but they weren't the same as the ones he had known. Their faces were no longer distinct, their thoughts were no longer private. Yet there was no sense of longing anymore. The emptiness was gone. He had once feared the loss of self, but now he understood. The self had never been a singular thing. It was always part of something larger. As he walked away from the edge, he was aware of the pull. It was stronger now, an undeniable force that seemed to reach for him, drag him back into the deep. He could hear the whispers of the core, the memories of the alien ship still reverberating through his mind. He was part of it now. The world had changed, and with it, everything had changed. The legacy of K-79 had ended, but the true inheritance of humanity, the inheritance of the collective, was only just beginning. The end. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.